No, but seriously, I am so tired of not being able to talk about the stuff that I want to talk about in the way that I want to talk about it on social media. Shadow banning is real. And you know what? Quite frankly, I am over it. It is boring. It is so, so boring. It's long. Like censoring people from speaking about things that impact everybody in some way, shape, or form is ridiculous. It's insane. It's ludicrous. So you know what? I was like, there's no point in sitting down there making up words. How many billions of words are you going to make up to cover the fact that you're saying sex? How many ways to say cock are you going to find? How many times are you going to sit there and think, now we can't say vagina, so let's say something else like or vaj. It feels ridiculous. I'm not going to lie. So I thought, put it in a podcast. Got something to say? Put it in a podcast. Even if you haven't got anything to say, put it in a podcast. So here we are. Yet another podcast with me. Now, if you've been rolling with me for a minute, you will know that this isn't my first step into the podcast world. In fact, this is like, I want to say podcast number 3. Like for the fact that I'm losing track, that kind of tells you everything. And no, it's not because I'm not consistent with stuff, because I am. Just have to say that. You know what? Actually, I think it's a great time to big up my original podcast partner, Jan, because you know what? Her and I stepped into this podcast world a few years ago now. And yeah, we had a lot of fun with it. You know, we were nominated for a few awards and we just talked shit. Basically, we spoke shit for an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, sometimes even 3 hours. We chopped it up and we put it out there and it did what it did. I feel like Jan and I have even better conversations in person or over the phone. And I also want to big up myself for the other podcast that I did previously, Hit the Clock. That was basically me just exploring, talking about sex and different things. You know what, to be quite honest with you, I can't even remember half of what I said on there. It was, yeah, so much has happened since. But yeah, here we are, another podcast. Nah, but seriously, I can't be fighting with social media anymore. I refuse. I'm just going to use this space to really talk about whatever the fuck I want, basically. So here we go. Squirting. Now, squirting is one of my favorite subjects for a number of reasons. I talk about it a lot. I've done loads of videos on it. I've put them on TikTok. I've put them on YouTube. I've put them on Instagram. Let's take them down. But, you know, we tried. So yeah, talking about squirting is nothing new under the sun for me. In fact, I actually love it. I love the fact that so many people are intrigued over the fact that a woman can actually squirt, like just shoot it out. I love that. But you know what? And I've done a TikTok video about this, just by the way. Men can squirt too. Yes, men can squirt. Like, don't be sitting there looking shocked. I can feel men be like, what the hell is this bitch talking about? What do you mean squirt? Squirt what? Oh, you mean ejaculate as in come? No, babes, you can squirt. Outside of the ejaculation, you can do that. You can squirt. Okay, let me explain, especially for the brothers getting upset. When it comes to women, the fluid released is from the skin gland. So it's not the bladder, although a lot of people seem to think it is. It definitely comes out of the same hole that urine comes out of, but it's actually generated in the skin gland, which is a completely separate part of the body. And just as an aside, you might find that female squirt, for want of a better expression, does have urine in it because it passes through the same pee-pee hole. There's a lot of discussion about whether squirt is wee-wee. I don't think it is. In fact, science has kind of proven that, like I said, there might be traces of urine, but ultimately it's a completely separate fluid. That's by the by. So anyway, when women squirt, they release fluid from the skin gland. Similarly, when it comes to men, he's releasing prostatic fluid. Now, I'm sure some people are sitting there thinking, what is it like that? Pre-cum. Kind of, yes. But for a man to squirt, it'll be more than pre-cum. Pre-cum it's normally just a little sort of dribble. I call it an intro. It's like, it's going to give you a little taste. Not taste, but, you know, going to give you a little sample. Like it's an introduction. It's a precursor. It's the warm-up act, if you like. Squirt itself, well, male squirt, is a lot more fruitful, let's say. There's a lot more of it. It is, as I say, prostatic fluid. Prostatic? From the prostate. So technically, yes, it does come out of the same hole as semen, urine. Again, one exit point. But the fluid itself is usually a kind of clear, viscous-like substance. It's definitely not semen, and it doesn't contain any sperm. Now, I said prostatic fluid, and I know for some guys, any mention of the word prostate or anything that kind of alludes to the prostate makes them kind of wince. Societal conditioning. But whilst, yes, a man could squirt through his prostate being massaged, we know that that's essentially the male G-spot, whether guys want to accept it or not. Having your prostate massaged is going to provide you with a lot of pleasure if you allow it. So yeah, that is one way of being able to squirt, but you don't have to do that. I'm a firm believer of only do what is comfortable for you. I mean, you know, exploration is always a good thing, but never do something that you're completely against. Always stick within your arena, so to speak, and consent. You have to be consenting, man or woman. Consent is always sexy, okay? Super sexy. Like, we want to hear those yeses. We want to hear yes and yes and yes. Not you got to be yes, like 100% on board, or forget about it. So yeah, so whilst his prostate being stimulated will kind of work towards helping him squirt, he can get there without that. Well, I say without that, but I think what we need to realize is that you don't need to directly stimulate the prostate to stimulate the prostate. It's a bit like the clit. A woman's clitoris can be stimulated in more ways than just directly. You know, you don't have to come straight at a woman's clit from the front and just deal with the external part that you see to be stimulated. For what it's worth, like the clitoris is a huge organ. When I say huge, it's not like the biggest organ in the body. So the bit that you see in between like the labia, I don't even think it accounts for a third of the entire organ. That's hidden inside the body. So yeah, ladies, if you've got yourself a guy, or guys, if you've got yourself a guy, try and make him squirt. If he allows you to, of course. It's funny because I'm kind of saying, ladies, get your guy to squirt. And it just kind of reminds me that for a guy to experience a woman squirting during some sort of sexual activity with him is a huge boost to his ego. We get it. I mean, it's porn that kind of makes you feel like, yes, you've arrived, like you've achieved, you've leveled up, you've done something spectacular, you've made her squirt, when actually there's a lot more to it than that. But we're not going to get into it. What I'm basically trying to say is the same way men like to see women squirt, I feel like a lot of ladies would love to see a guy squirt. I feel like we should demand, but in a consensual way. Do you know what I mean? I feel like the same way guys can be in your ear talking about squirt for me. Oh, let me see it rain. Oh, squirt for me. And obviously not in that voice, but you know, that kind of constant prodding and just annoying. Do you know what I mean? Like, ladies, let's be real. Like, talk about put me off. Like, you're doing too much talking, babes. And I'm someone that loves talking, but there's a thin line between doing too much talking and saying the wrong damn thing. Holla if you hear me. Because seriously, you can say too much of the wrong thing. And I think when it comes to squirting, there's a lot of that. So ladies, if we're going to do the demanding, like, let's not be annoying. Let's just tell him maybe once or twice. In fact, you can even tell him at the start. You could be like, babes, I know you can do it, and we're going to do it together, but I really want to see you squirt. And I want to just see, yeah, I want to see you come because I want to see you come. But I also want to see you squirt. So we're going to do that, okay? Just tell him. Tell him this is what's happening. And then if you're kind of into it and he forgets that that's what we're supposed to be doing, then you can gently remind him again. You can just sort of say, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half into it, you could just be like, babes, remember what we said about the squirting? Like, what are we doing? Yeah, I think that's a good plan. So October is, or was, because we're very much at the end of October, but October is National Kink Month. And the aim of the month is, like any other awareness month, is to raise awareness. And in this instance, its aim is to focus on acceptance and understanding around sexual diversity, specifically kink. Lots of us have kinks. In fact, most of us have kinks, yet we are so very secretive about it. Now, I'm definitely not someone that's in the business of telling people that they should be announcing their innermost darkest desires and just telling the world, because there's no need. I think for me, it's not about the oversharing. My thing is the fact that people feel shame around having a kink. So it's not about you not telling people, it's the reason why you wouldn't tell someone. The thing about it is the secretiveness is not just between, say, you and another person. It's between partners. So you could be intimate with someone, sleeping with someone. As a woman, allowing a man to enter you doesn't get much more intimate than that. As a man, allowing a woman to just gush and juice all over you and take you in her mouth and take you inside her body and just be with you. It doesn't get much more intimate than that either. But to feel that you can't tell them what you really like, it's wild. We should be free of stigma and shame. Should be. And I know I sound like I'm coming from a very idealistic place, but I really believe that. Imagine, statistically, up to 90% of women are hiding what they really feel and are hiding what really brings them pleasure. It's interesting that women seem to be the ones that are less free when it comes to talking about their kinks. But that's definitely how it appears in society, because I would go as far as to say that men aren't as free with expressing what they really want as we're kind of led to believe they are. Like, take, for example, you have a man in a situation with a woman, like she's up for whatever. Not every guy is going to take that opportunity to say, this is what I want to do. This is how I like it. Do it like that. Okay, the obvious. If he's getting head, he might do a little bit of instructing. He might say, oh, I like it like this, or do it like that, or deep throat it, or whatever it is that, he's got to say to kind of get the right kind of head for him. But outside of what is perceived as okay to say as a man, do you know what I'm trying to say? He's not necessarily going to sit there and say, I want you to suck my toes, babes. He might suck your toes, but he's not necessarily going to tell you that actually he likes his toes being sucked as well, because apparently in society, that's not a man thing. Do you see what I'm trying to get at? There's certain things that men are allowed to admit to. It's a problem all around. Simply put, a kink is a sexual interest or practice or preference that is considered beyond the mainstream. So we're talking about things like threesomes, voyeurism, exhibitionism, sensory play, maybe some BDSM, perhaps some role play, and I even mentioned playing with feet, foot fetishes. Now, I just want to quickly clarify. I mentioned foot fetishes, and yeah, enjoying playing with feet can absolutely be a kink. Kink and fetish are two terms that are used interchangeably, but they are actually different. A fetish is, or can be defined as, a strong sexual fixation on activity, a body part or an object that is necessary, and this is the difference. Whilst a kink is not necessary, a fetish is absolutely necessary for that particular person to experience in order for them to be aroused or satisfied. A fetish is needed in order to get there, basically. So in a nutshell, whilst a foot fetish can be a kink, it's not essential to get off, but with a fetish, it is. Okay. So back to kinks. Sex NDAs are a thing. Research has shown that 37% of people would be happy to sign a sex non-disclosure agreement to make sure their kinks don't ever come to light. And nearly half of the people that took part in the research said they would consider it. That is crazy. Imagine you've got a sex NDA. How are we going to introduce this? How are we going to bring, even the thought of just wheeling out a piece of paper, or I don't know, we'd probably be able to do it electronically. So it might be something that we could do online. I mean, how does it go? So at what point do you introduce this sex NDA? Because if you're getting down, if you're enjoying the moment, enjoying the vibes, enjoying the guanins, how do you kind of decide that now is a good time to request the signing of an NDA? Or is it something that you do beforehand? Because if it's something that you do beforehand, then you might put the other person off, because they might be thinking, well, what the hell are we going to do that requires me to sign a non-disclosure agreement? I mean, when I think of NDAs, like, I think of certain celebrities. We are not going to name them, but NDAs are quite a serious bit of kit. Do you know what I mean? And to feel that you can't express yourself, or the only way you'd be able to truly express yourself in the bedroom is if you've got one of these things signed, that really does highlight a bigger issue, in my opinion. Shame, stigma, the same words I've been mentioning. It's down to a mix of factors: society, culture, psychological factors. They all kind of feed in. Things like how you judge stuff, how you're raised, what you're brought up to believe is acceptable. These things all kind of feed into how you express yourself, not just sexually, just in life in general. Also, internalized shame. A lot of shame comes from how we were brought up and what we were taught was right and wrong. Religion. I'm not even gonna go there when it comes to religion. I respect it. 1000% I respect it, and I respect it enough to not touch it today. I will say, even how your kinks are represented in the media. Not something you would necessarily think about immediately, but check it. If all you've ever seen is talk on social media, in the newspapers, even though they're more or less obsolete, but you know what I mean? If you've been brought up with newspapers, if you've been brought up with magazines, the radio, the TV, or whatever it is, and a certain something that you like has been demonized, let's just say, or it's always associated with the bad guy, I can't think of an example at the minute, then once you realize that actually you like that, even though the act itself, there's nothing wrong with it, but because it's been attached to other negativity, like the bad guy. Classic example, people that enjoy water sports, very controversial. There would be a lot of shame around that, because we are taught that we should go straight into the toilet. But there are some people that enjoy having that as part of their sexual activity. For them to be able to speak so freely about that would take a lot. R. Kelly, for example, like the whole thing about him enjoying water sports was made even worse after getting convicted, because now what people do is they associate that out of order behavior with everything the man did. You know, so now we know R. Kelly likes to piss on people or be pissed on. Anybody that likes to piss on people or be pissed on is going to feel some kind of way because they know that this man has been convicted of being very bad and this is what he likes to do. So it gets a bit of a bad rap. What we're kind of encouraged to think, what we see and what's presented to us also affects our overall view on stuff. So what's the answer? I don't think it's straightforward. I mean, yes, we can say self-acceptance. It starts with that. If you accept yourself for who you are, then two fingers to whoever else has got an issue with it. 100% I'm here for that. But the reality of that, I don't know. It's kind of a 360 thing, isn't it? Yes, accept yourself, but also we need re-education, or we need more inclusive education that teaches people that, I mean, we don't have to define kinks as in individual kinks, but just teaching people at the appropriate age that some people might enjoy things that you might not. And provided it's within the realms of the law, let people be. Also, I think there should be some responsibility for people that put out media. And I mean, I know shit has to sell, but again, maybe I'm living in an idealistic world. Who knows? I don't think it's cool to be made to feel like a pariah just because you enjoy something sexually that 40% of the population don't, or 10% out of that 40 are not willing to share that they too enjoy that. I think that's a little bit out of order. STIs, they are extremely common. And even when it comes to something like an STI, things don't always pan out how you expect them to. Most people think when it comes to STIs, if they're unlucky enough to get something, catch something, then it's a quick visit to the GP or the clinic to get a tablet or a shot of something, and then they're pretty much good to go. That's not always the case. There was a story in the news recently about a guy that caught chlamydia and he thought he was going to have his leg amputated as a result of it. Long story short, the chlamydia caused him to have a bout of reactive arthritis. This basically caused him severe joint pain and inflammation. Not nice. His reaction was extreme and it is quite rare, but it's possible. It's even listed on the NHS website as a potential side effect to having chlamydia. So it's not unusual. It's not that unusual. Imagine this dude was in such pain that he couldn't get out of bed. It was excruciating. Very extreme case, but real all the same. There is definitely a more relaxed vibe around STIs and catching one. And on one hand, I'm kind of cool with that because I feel like, well, awareness. Like we must be more aware. I find people are kind of happy to talk about STIs in a really weird way, actually. I mean, it's not such a big deal for many. And gone are the days where someone's likely to sit there and think, oh shit, I think I've caught something. Not sure I really want to go to the clinic. Like, that's going to be really embarrassing. Like, oh my God, they're going to stick this down my dick. They're going to do that. They're going to take swabs. They're going to blah, 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 blah. There's less let's do overtime in the brain before actually going and doing it, and more let's just go and do it. It's so relaxed. It's so relaxed. Someone referring to chlamydia as the mids. Imagine. I thought it was pretty amazing, actually. It was like, yeah. So-and-so caught a bat of the mids. Like, what? The mids? What's the mids? He was so blasé about it. But in that, it was like kind of cool because obviously him and his friends are like, yeah, right. So you had sex last night. You're feeling a little bit ropey downstairs. Like, go and get yourself checked out. There's that. So in that respect, it's a good thing. We need to normalize it. Normalize it. I'm here for the normalization. But in and amongst all of this normalizing, we've forgotten just how serious some of these STIs actually are. STIs are infections. STIs can have side effects, especially if they're untreated. STIs can have a massive effect on the body long term, especially for women. Like something like chlamydia for women, if it's left untreated, that could render her infertile. It can even result in her having an ectopic pregnancy, for example. An ectopic pregnancy, by its very nature, is not going to be something a woman wants to experience. It's basically where the baby grows outside of where it's supposed to. And because of that, the baby can't go the full term. In fact, the baby has to be terminated, and fairly quickly as well, because that could cause problems down the line if it's not. Not pleasant. Okay, so I'm really not trying to make this all about chlamydia and STIs, but that story about the guy with the extreme chlamydia or the extreme reactions to chlamydia is actually a stark reminder that there is no place for complacency when it comes to your sexual health. We have to stay on top. Did you know? There is, in fact, the world's loudest penis. Loudest penis. How in God's name does someone have a loud penis? How? Like, I can understand a loud vagina to a certain extent. You know what I'm saying? When things are going off, there might be some squelching and some sounds going on. So that could get quite loud, potentially. But how does a penis get loud? When I read this story, I was like, someone, in fact, I don't even know if I want someone to explain to me, but explain to me anyway, because I am super confused. Turns out the world's loudest penis actually belongs to an aquatic insect, an insect that lives in water. The Micronetta schultzi. That's what we're dealing with. That insect, which is a mere 2 millimeters long, has the loudest penis in the world. And do you know how the penis gets loud? This ting rubs its ting against its abdomen. That makes a chirping noise. This chirping noise can reach up to 99.2 decibels, which is apparently is the equivalent of sitting in the front row of an orchestral concert. You know why he does this shit? Yeah, to attract a mate. All of this noise to get some pussy, basically. Mad. Imagine if human men had loud penises. That would be hilarious. Actually, no, it probably wouldn't. In fact, it would probably be quite disturbing, and I don't know if I'd want to be part of that. I don't know if I'd want to hear a dick make a noise. Maybe because we're not used to that. I feel like if that was introduced to me now, I'd run for the damn hills. I suppose if it was something that we always kind of knew was a thing, then we'd kind of accept it. But could you imagine? What would the sound be like? What would the sound of a human penis be like if it were to make a sound? Yeah, that's weird. You know what? I'm going to leave you with that thought. If you fancy sending me a DM with the sound, obviously, that you make, like, no videos, please. I don't even want to see no videos. Definitely no funny ass videos, because I know your dick can't make no sound. So if you want to send me a DM with what you think it might sound like, so it might be a or a or a yeah. I reckon there's some guys that if their dick had to make a sound, it would sound like that. Yeah, just rubbish. I shouldn't say that. Forget I said that. You know what? This is the end of episode 1. Now, but seriously, I'll be here every week, hopefully, talking about stuff. Just, free in my mouth. If you're down with that, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, all of that good stuff. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe. Check me out on all podcast platforms. Got to work it out. So by the next episode, I'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So until then, ciao, ciao.